Let us journey back to the height of the Roman Empire, a time of unprecedented power and grandeur, a time of emperors, gladiators, and philosophers. At its zenith, the Roman Empire stretched from the British Isles in the north to the deserts of Africa in the south, and from the Iberian Peninsula in the west to the fertile lands of Mesopotamia in the east. This was an empire where diverse cultures, languages, and traditions blended together under the shadow of the Roman eagle. It was a time of opulence and decadence, of innovation and conquest, and of cultural and intellectual flowering that left an indelible mark on the annals of human civilization. Picture the city of Rome in this era, the heart of the empire, pulsating with life and activity. The city's grandeur, reflected in its towering monuments, expansive public spaces, and lavish villas, was a testament to the empire's might and prosperity. Rome was a bustling metropolis, a city of contrasts, where magnificent temples and luxurious palaces stood alongside crowded tenements and bustling marketplaces. The city's streets were alive with the sounds of vendors hawking their goods, children playing, and the constant hum of human activity. At the same time, the city was also a place of quiet reflection, with serene gardens and tranquil public baths offering a respite from the urban bustle. The people of Rome were as diverse as the city itself. There were the patricians, the wealthy aristocrats who held the highest offices and wielded immense political power. They lived in grand villas, adorned with elaborate mosaics and frescoes, surrounded by lush gardens and attended by numerous slaves. Their days were filled with political maneuvering, public duties, and elaborate feasts and entertainments. Beneath the patricians were the plebeians, the common people of Rome. They were the backbone of the city, working as farmers, traders, craftsmen, and laborers. Despite their lower status, the plebeians had their own political institutions and were vital to the functioning of the empire. Life in the Roman Empire was not just about politics and power, but was also rich in cultural and intellectual pursuits. The Romans were great admirers of Greek culture and learning, and many of the empire's greatest thinkers and artists were heavily influenced by Greek ideas. Philosophy, literature, and the arts flourished under the patronage of the emperors and the wealthy elite. The works of poets like Virgil and Horace, and philosophers like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, continue to be read and admired to this day. Yet, life in the Roman Empire was also marked by struggle and hardship. The empire's vast size and cultural diversity made it a challenge to govern. There were frequent uprisings and rebellions, especially in the more distant provinces. Slavery was widespread, and the lot of the slaves was often harsh and brutal. The gap between the rich and the poor was vast, and social mobility was limited. Despite these challenges, the Roman Empire managed to maintain its cohesion and stability for several centuries, a testament to its administrative efficiency and military might. But life in the Roman Empire was not just about survival and struggle. It was also about enjoyment and celebration. The Romans were known for their love of games and spectacles. The Colosseum, the largest amphitheater in the empire, was the venue for thrilling gladiatorial contests and wild beast hunts. The Circus Maximus, a massive stadium, hosted thrilling chariot races that attracted tens of thousands of spectators. These spectacles, often sponsored by the emperors and wealthy citizens, were not just forms of entertainment, but also important tools for maintaining social order and promoting Roman values. Religion was another integral part of life in the Roman Empire. The Romans practiced a polytheistic religion, worshipping a pantheon of gods and goddesses. They believed in the divine origin of their city and their empire, and performed elaborate rituals and sacrifices to ensure the favor of the gods. Over time, the Roman religion absorbed elements from the various cultures under its rule, leading to a rich and diverse religious landscape. As we delve deeper into the life and times of the Roman Empire, we will explore the intricate social hierarchy, the political machinations, the intellectual pursuits, and the daily struggles and joys of the people who lived under the shadow of the Roman eagle. We will also examine the factors that led to the empire's decline and fall, and the legacy it left for future generations. As we journey through this fascinating period of history, let us remember that the Roman Empire was not just a political entity, but a vibrant and diverse civilization, a melting pot of cultures and ideas that shaped the course of human history. In this journey back in time, we have already begun to explore the grandeur and complexity of life during the peak of the Roman Empire. From the opulence of the patrician villas to the humble dwellings of the plebeians, from the intellectual salons to the bustling marketplaces, from the grand spectacles in the Colosseum to the tranquil quiet of the public baths, the Roman Empire was a world of contrasts, a world of power and struggle, of culture and learning, and of human aspiration and achievement. As we continue this journey, let us immerse ourselves in this fascinating era, learning from its lessons, appreciating its accomplishments, and marveling at its enduring legacy. As we delve deeper into the remarkable fabric of the Roman Empire at its zenith, let's journey through the vibrant streets of Rome, the bustling heart of the empire. Imagine the sight of grand edifices and public structures, like the Colosseum and the Pantheon, that punctuated the city's skyline. These architectural marvels were a testament to Rome's unparalleled engineering prowess, and they continue to captivate us in the present day. The most common dwelling in Rome was the insula, or apartment building. These structures were often built cheaply and could be prone to fires and collapses. However, this was the everyday reality for most Romans, as only the wealthy could afford private homes. These domus were luxurious private residences with rooms arranged around a central courtyard, often adorned with intricate mosaics and frescoes. In the Roman society, the family was perceived as a fundamental unit. The paterfamilias, or father of the family, held an almost absolute power, known as patria potestas, over his kin. This power extended over his wife, children, and slaves, binding them into a single economic and legal entity. However, contrary to many preconceived notions, Roman women enjoyed a significant degree of freedom compared to their contemporaries in other ancient societies. They could own and inherit property and had the right to divorce. Slavery was an integral part of the Roman economy and society. Slaves performed an array of tasks, from domestic chores and tutoring to manual labor in the fields and mines. However, the life of a slave was far from simple. Their treatment largely depended on their masters. Some slaves were treated relatively well, while others were subjected to severe hardships. The Romans were renowned for their advancements in engineering and public health. They built an intricate network of roads and bridges to expedite trade and military movement. Their aqueducts ingeniously transported fresh water from distant sources into cities and towns, facilitating public baths and latrines, and upholding a high standard of sanitation. The Roman diet was simple, but nourishing, with wheat and barley serving as staples. They enjoyed a variety of fruits, vegetables, and legumes, and the wealthier Romans could afford meat, fish, and exotic spices. The Romans were also known for their love of wine, which was consumed at all meals and social occasions. Education was highly valued in Roman society. Wealthy Romans often hired private tutors for their children, while the less affluent sent their children to public schools. The curriculum was rigorous, focusing on reading, writing, arithmetic, and moral conduct. Religion permeated every aspect of Roman life. The Romans worshipped a pantheon of gods and goddesses, each governing a different aspect of life. They believed in the importance of maintaining a proper relationship with the gods through rituals and sacrifices, a practice known as pietas. Despite its grandeur, the Roman Empire was not devoid of social issues. Poverty and class disparity were rampant, and the gap between the rich and the poor was starkly visible in the city's urban landscape. Public entertainment, such as gladiatorial games and chariot races, were often used as a means to divert the population's attention from these societal problems. As we step back and view this intricate tapestry of Roman life, we find a society characterized by a blend of remarkable achievements and profound challenges. From their architectural marvels to their social structures, the Romans crafted a civilization that continues to influence our world today. As we close our eyes and drift into sleep, we carry with us the echoes of this ancient world, reminding us of the indelible human capacity to create, adapt, and endure. As we delve deeper into the Roman Empire at its zenith, let's explore the remarkable city planning and infrastructure that underpinned its prosperity. Intricate designs, remarkable efficiency, and the use of advanced building materials were characteristic of Roman city planning, reflecting a society that valued organization, practicality, and luxury. At the heart of every Roman city was the Forum, a public square that served as the central hub for political, economic, and social activities. The Forum was typically surrounded by important government buildings, temples, and markets. It was here that citizens gathered to discuss politics, engage in trade, or simply socialize. Larger cities like Rome had multiple forums, each with its unique identity and purpose. A city's grandeur was often epitomized by its monumental structures. The most famous of these is perhaps the Colosseum in Rome, an engineering marvel that could accommodate up to 50,000 spectators. It was used for public spectacles such as gladiatorial contests, mock sea battles, animal hunts, and executions. But lest we think all Roman cities were adorned with such grandiose structures, it's worth noting that smaller towns and cities had their own amphitheaters, albeit on a more modest scale. A quintessential feature of Roman city planning was the grid system. Roads were laid out in a grid pattern, with the two main roads, the Cardo and Decumanus, intersecting at the center of the city. This efficient layout facilitated easy navigation and had the added advantage of dividing the city into manageable blocks. The streets were often lined with shops and stalls, creating a lively and bustling atmosphere. But the Romans didn't just excel at city planning. They were also masters of infrastructure. Their aqueducts, for example, were a marvel of engineering, using gravity to transport water from distant sources into the heart of the city. The Romans understood the importance of clean water for the health and well-being of their citizens, and their aqueducts, some of which are still in use today, are a testament to their foresight and ingenuity. Not to be overlooked is the Roman sewer system, the Cloaca Maxima, another engineering feat that greatly improved the sanitation and hygiene of the city. It was a vast underground network that carried away waste and stormwater, maintaining cleanliness and reducing the risk of disease. Roman homes, known as domus, were equally impressive. In cities, these homes were often part of insulae, a kind of multi-story apartment building. The ground floor was typically reserved for shops or businesses, while the upper floors housed the living quarters. Wealthier Romans, however, lived in detached houses with multiple rooms, a central courtyard, and often private baths. The baths were not merely a place for hygiene, but also a social center. The grand bathhouses, like the baths of Caracalla in Rome, boasted an array of facilities, including hot and cold baths, saunas, gymnasiums, and even libraries. Patrons could enjoy a leisurely soak, exercise, or engage in intellectual discourse, all under one roof. From their city planning and infrastructure to their homes and social centers, the Romans demonstrated a deep understanding of urban living. They recognized the need for organization, cleanliness, leisure, and community, and implemented these principles in their designs. This attention to detail, coupled with their technological prowess, contributed to the high standard of living during the peak of the Roman Empire. As we continue our journey, we will further explore the Roman lifestyle, their food, clothing, and entertainment, all of which played a significant role in shaping the unique culture of this great civilization. But for now, let's take a moment to appreciate the remarkable planning and infrastructure that underpinned the prosperity of the Roman Empire at its zenith. As we continue our journey into the past, we now find ourselves at the heart of the Roman Empire, its bustling capital, Rome. The city stood as a testament to the empire's grandeur, a place where one could witness the full breadth of Roman life and culture. Indeed, Rome was the epitome of what it meant to live during the peak of the Roman Empire. As we wander through the ancient city in our minds, we first come across the famous Roman bathhouses, or thermae. These were not merely places for hygiene, but served as social hubs, where Romans of all social classes would gather to gossip, conduct business, and relax after a long day. These bathhouses were architectural masterpieces, boasting large heated pools, steam rooms, and gymnasiums. Some, like the baths of Caracalla, even housed libraries, lecture rooms, and shops. The Romans took great care in their personal hygiene, and these bathhouses were a testament to that commitment. Stepping out of the warmth of the bathhouse, we find ourselves on the bustling streets of Rome. The city was a hive of activity. Streets and alleys were filled with vendors selling their wares, from fresh produce, fish and meat, to clothing and jewelry. Slaves bustled about, carrying out their masters' orders. There was a constant hum of conversation, haggling, and the clatter of carts and chariots. Our path leads us to the Grand Forum, the heart of Roman public life. Here, one could find the great temples, the Senate House, and the markets. It was in the Forum that the citizens of Rome would gather to hear important speeches, witness trials, and participate in public affairs. The illustrious marble buildings reflected the sun, creating an almost ethereal glow that must have been awe-inspiring to the citizens of Rome. Just beyond the Forum, we find the Circus Maximus, the great stadium where Romans would flock to witness the thrilling chariot races. These events were immensely popular, and the stadium could hold up to 150,000 spectators. The air would be filled with the roar of the crowd as they cheered for their favorite charioteers, adding to the exhilarating atmosphere. Venturing further, we come across the Colosseum, the grand amphitheater that was the venue for gladiatorial contests, mock sea battles, and other public spectacles. Here, Romans would gather to watch these violent yet captivating performances. The Colosseum could hold upwards of 50,000 spectators, and the elaborate shows were often sponsored by emperors as a means to gain popularity with the public. As the day winds down, we find ourselves in the residential districts of Rome. The wealthy lived in grand villas adorned with beautiful mosaics and frescoes, while the less fortunate resided in insular or apartment blocks. These were often cramped and lacked basic amenities, reflecting the stark divide between the rich and the poor in Roman society. As the sun sets, the city is illuminated by oil lamps, casting a warm glow on the stone buildings. The streets are quieter now, but the city is far from sleeping. In taverns and inns, Romans gather to eat, drink, and revel in each other's company. Music and laughter fill the air, adding to the lively atmosphere. As we conclude our journey through the day in Rome, it becomes evident that life during the peak of the Roman Empire was defined by a vibrant social scene, an appreciation for the arts, and a strong sense of community. It was a period of unrivaled prosperity and cultural advancement, the impact of which can still be felt today. In our next section, we will delve deeper into the daily lives of the Roman citizens, exploring their routines, their beliefs, and their personal lives. We will discover how they lived, loved, and thrived in this grand empire. So, for now, close your eyes and imagine the glow of the Roman lamps, the hum of the city as it goes about its nightly routines, and the distant laughter from a nearby tavern. Let the sounds and sights of ancient Rome lull you into a peaceful sleep as we prepare for our next journey into the past. As we continue on our journey through the Roman Empire at its peak, we find ourselves landing in the bustling heart of the empire, Rome herself. It is important to remember that Rome was not just the capital, but a symbol of the empire's might, wealth, and grandeur. The city was a bustling metropolis, home to over 1 million residents, a figure that was indeed staggering for the era. Rome was a melting pot of cultures, languages, and traditions, all coexisting under the strong edifice of the Roman law and order. The city was a marvel of engineering and architecture, with grand structures like the Colosseum, the Forum, and the Pantheon. The streets were bustling with commerce, with traders from all corners of the empire selling their goods. The sounds of the city were a constant hum, from the clatter of the chariots on the cobblestones to the chatter of the citizens in the bathhouses and taverns. Amidst this bustle, the average Roman citizen led a life that was, in many ways, not so different from our own. They woke up at dawn, had a light breakfast, and then went about their day's work. Many Romans were engaged in commerce, while others worked as craftsmen, soldiers, farmers, or slaves. Lunch was a quick meal, often eaten on the go, while dinner was a more elaborate affair, often shared with family and friends. Despite the grandeur of the city and the empire, life was not easy for the average Roman citizen. The gap between the rich and the poor was wide, and poverty was rampant. Many Romans lived in cramped, multi-story apartment buildings, known as insulae, which were often unsafe and unsanitary. Fire was a constant threat in these structures, and the Roman fire brigade was a vital part of the city's infrastructure. Yet, despite these challenges, Roman society was remarkably resilient and adaptive. The Romans were great innovators, and they developed many technologies that we take for granted today. They had a complex system of aqueducts to bring fresh water into the city, and a network of roads and bridges that connected the far-flung corners of the empire. They had public baths, gymnasiums, and libraries, and they valued education and the arts. In terms of culture, the Romans were great enthusiasts of the theatre, and plays were a popular form of entertainment. Epic poetry, philosophy, and history were also highly valued, and the works of great Roman writers like Virgil, Horace, and Livy have survived to this day. The Romans also loved their sports and games. Chariot races were a popular pastime, and the Circus Maximus, the largest stadium in Rome, could hold up to 250,000 spectators. Gladiatorial games were also a major attraction. Although they were a brutal and bloody spectacle, religion played a central role in Roman life. The Romans were polytheistic, worshipping a pantheon of gods and goddesses. Temples dedicated to these deities dotted the city, and religious festivals and ceremonies were a regular part of Roman life. The emperor himself was considered a divine figure, and his cult was an important part of the state religion. As we wrap up this section of our journey through the Roman Empire, it's important to remember that Rome was not just a city, but a symbol. It was the heart of an empire that spanned 3 continents, a testament to the ingenuity, ambition, and resilience of the Roman people. Life in Rome was a microcosm of life in the empire at large, filled with all the complexities, contradictions, and challenges that come with being a part of one of history's greatest civilizations. As we move forward, we will delve deeper into the intricacies of Roman society, exploring the lives of its people, its institutions, and its culture in greater detail. As the sun sets on another day during the peak of the Roman Empire, we find ourselves exploring the cultural and social aspects of life during this period. The Romans, much like us, sought entertainment and leisure activities to fill their free time. Many of these pursuits are still familiar to us today, with theaters, bathhouses, and stadiums playing a significant role in Roman society. An integral part of Roman culture was the theatre, a forum for both entertainment and social interaction. Performances were diverse, ranging from tragedies and comedies to pantomimes and mimes. Roman theatres were grand constructions, with seating for thousands of spectators. They were often located in the heart of the city, adding a vibrant pulse to the urban landscape. These performances served not just as a means of amusement, but also as a platform for social commentary, often reflecting the political and social issues of the time. Alongside the theatre, the Romans also found amusement in the gladiatorial games. These were brutal affairs, with gladiators often fighting to the death. Despite their violent nature, the games were extremely popular, drawing crowds of spectators from all social classes. The spectacle was a powerful demonstration of Roman power and the might of the Roman military. The games were also a way for the emperors to gain favor with the masses, often sponsoring lavish spectacles at their own expense. However, it wasn't all violence and drama. The Romans also appreciated the finer things in life. Bathhouses, known as thermae, were a common sight in Roman cities and towns. These were not just places for bathing, but also for socializing, conducting business, and even exercising. The larger bathhouses were architectural marvels, boasting heated floors, steam rooms, and ornate mosaics. It was a daily ritual for many Romans to visit the bathhouse, a testament to the importance of cleanliness and hygiene in Roman society. Roman cuisine, another fascinating aspect of their culture, was diverse and sophisticated. The diet of a Roman citizen would vary greatly depending on their social status. The wealthy Romans indulged in extravagant feasts, with dishes made from a variety of exotic ingredients. These banquets were often elaborate affairs, lasting several hours and accompanied by entertainment. On the other hand, the diet of the common Roman citizen was more modest, typically consisting of grains, fruits, vegetables, and occasionally meat. The social structure of the Roman Empire was rigid, with a clear distinction between the aristocratic elite and the common citizens. At the top were the emperors and the senatorial class, followed by the equestrians, and then the plebeians. Slaves, who were considered property rather than citizens, were at the bottom of this hierarchy. Despite these social divisions, there was a degree of social mobility within Roman society. Through military service, financial success, or political ambition, it was possible for individuals to rise through the ranks. This relative social mobility, along with the promise of Roman citizenship, made the empire an attractive prospect for many outside its borders. Education was highly valued in Roman society. Children from wealthy families were often tutored at home, learning a curriculum that included literature, history, and philosophy. The less privileged, however, often received a more basic education, if any at all. Regardless of social class, education was seen as essential for preparing young Romans for their roles as citizens and leaders. Religion played a crucial role in Roman society, with an extensive pantheon of gods and goddesses worshipped by the populace. Temples dedicated to these deities dotted the landscape of the empire, acting as centers for religious ceremonies and festivals. The Roman calendar was filled with religious observances, demonstrating the importance of religion in daily life. As we delve deeper into the life of the Romans, we begin to see a society that is both familiar and alien to us. Their customs, traditions, and daily routines offer a fascinating glimpse into a civilization that, despite its eventual decline, has left an enduring legacy on the world. As the night draws in, let's take a moment to appreciate the complexity and richness of Roman life during the peak of the empire. Tomorrow, we will continue our journey, exploring the political and military aspects of Rome at its zenith. For now, however, let's close our eyes and dream of the grandeur that was Rome. As we delve deeper into our exploration of life during the peak of the Roman Empire, or Pax Romana, we move our focus from the bustling streets and the grandeur of the public spaces to the intimate settings of Roman homes. The home, or domus, was a critical part of Roman society, and it offers us a fascinating glimpse into the daily life of the period. Roman homes varied greatly depending on the wealth and status of their owners. The rich lived in spacious, opulent houses decorated with intricate mosaics and frescoes, while the poor resided in cramped, multi-story apartment buildings known as insulae. The domus, the traditional home of the wealthy Roman, was a marvel of architectural design. The typical domus consisted of several rooms, including a dining room, triclinium, bedrooms, cubicula, a kitchen, and a study or office, tablinum. At the heart of the domus was the atrium, a large, open central space with an opening in the roof that allowed rainwater to collect in a shallow pool below called the impluvium. This ingenious design provided natural light and ventilation while also serving a practical function. The walls of these homes were often adorned with intricate frescoes, depicting scenes from mythology, landscapes, or daily life. Floors were often covered in mosaics, painstakingly crafted from tiny colored tiles. The themes of these mosaics range from simple geometric patterns to complex scenes from mythology, history, or the natural world. These decorative elements were more than just aesthetic. They were a way for the homeowner to display their wealth, taste, and education. The Roman domus was also a place of work. Many wealthy Romans had shops or offices attached to their homes where they conducted their business affairs. Slaves performed much of the actual labor, whether it be managing a shop, cooking meals, or cleaning the home. The treatment of slaves varied greatly, but in many cases, they were considered part of the family and were treated with respect. In contrast to the domus, the insulae were crowded, multi-story apartment buildings that housed the city's lower classes. These buildings were often poorly constructed and prone to fires and collapses. The apartments themselves were small and cramped, often with a single room serving as both a living and sleeping area. Despite these hardships, the insulae were vibrant places, teeming with life and activity. Food and dining were central aspects of Roman life. Meals were simple for the lower classes, often consisting of grain, vegetables, and occasionally meat or fish. The wealthy, however, indulged in extravagant feasts that showcased their wealth and status. A typical banquet might include a range of dishes from oysters to peacock, accompanied by fine wines, and followed by entertainments such as music, dancing, or poetry readings. Education was highly valued in Roman society. Children were taught at home by their parents or private tutors until the age of 7, when they began formal schooling. Boys and girls were educated separately, with boys learning reading, writing, arithmetic, and rhetoric, while girls were taught spinning, weaving, and other domestic skills. Religion permeated every aspect of Roman life, from the public rituals performed in the temples and at the public games, to the private ceremonies conducted in the home. Each home had a small shrine, or lararium, where the household gods were worshipped. These gods, or lares, were believed to protect the home and its inhabitants. In our next section, we will explore the fascinating world of Roman entertainment, where gladiatorial contests and chariot races captured the imagination of the populace and provided a welcome distraction from the challenges of daily life. As we continue our journey through the peak of the Roman Empire, let your mind wander through the streets of Rome, from the grand villas of the wealthy to the bustling insulae of the poor, imagining the sights sounds and smells of this remarkable period in history. As we continue our exploration of life during the peak of the Roman Empire, we now turn our attention towards the political structure and the military that form the backbone of this historical powerhouse. At the heart of the Roman political system was the Senate, an advisory council made up of Rome's most prestigious citizens. The Senate held enormous sway over the Roman state and was composed of lifelong members, usually former magistrates. The Senate was not only a political body, but also a social institution, a sort of gentleman's club where the elite could discuss matters of state and society. The Senate's primary role was to advise the magistrates and the people, but its decisions, known as senatus consulta, held significant weight. The Roman Empire was a period of autocracy, with the emperor holding supreme power. However, maintaining the illusion of the republic was important, and emperors often went to great lengths to secure the Senate's approval. The emperor would propose legislation, which the Senate would then approve. In reality, the Senate had no real power to oppose the emperor, but their endorsement gave the emperor's decisions an aura of legitimacy. The emperor could not rule alone, and the imperial court was a complex web of officials, advisors, and family members. The emperor's household, the domus, was the administrative hub of the empire. Here the emperor was surrounded by a multitude of advisors, freedmen, slaves, and family members who helped him rule. The court was a hotbed of intrigue, with factions vying for the emperor's favor. The Roman Empire was not just a political entity, it was also a massive military machine. The Romans had a professional standing army, the first of its kind in history. The backbone of this army was the legions, units of about 5,000 men each, which were further divided into centuries of around 80 men. The legions were not just fighting forces, they were also engineering corps, building roads, bridges, and fortifications across the empire. Each legion was a self-contained unit with its own command structure, medical staff, engineers, and even a small navy. The soldiers were well trained and disciplined, with a strict hierarchy and a code of conduct. The legions were not just for war, they also served as a police force, maintaining law and order in the provinces. The key to the success of the Roman military was its adaptability. The Romans would often adopt the tactics and weapons of the enemies they defeated, integrating them into their own military doctrine. This adaptability, combined with the discipline and organization of the legions, made the Roman army a formidable force. The Roman navy also played a crucial role in the empire's expansion. It was responsible for protecting the sea routes that were vital for trade and communication. The navy was not as prestigious as the legions, but it was essential for maintaining the empire's security and prosperity. Life in the Roman military was hard, but it offered opportunities for social advancement. A career in the army or the navy was a path to citizenship for many provincials. Soldiers were rewarded with land, money, and the opportunity to climb the social ladder. As we delve deeper into the political and military structure of the Roman Empire, we see an intricate system of checks and balances, a complex web of relationships, and a military machine that was as innovative as it was efficient. These elements combined to create an empire that lasted for centuries, leaving a lasting legacy on the world. As we transition from the political and military aspects of Roman life, our next section will focus on the cultural and social facets of the Roman Empire, examining the daily lives of its citizens from diverse socio-economic backgrounds. Rest assured, there is still much to discover about this remarkable period in human history. As we delve deeper into the heart of the Roman Empire at its peak, it becomes increasingly clear that the Romans lived in a world that was both similar and alien to our own. Let's take a closer look at the day-to-day life of an average Roman citizen living during the height of the empire, around the 2nd century AD. Romans awoke with the sunrise, often to the sounds of the bustling city streets. As the sun's first rays began to peek over the horizon, Rome would already be coming alive with the noises of vendors setting up their stalls, the clatter of horses and carts on the cobblestone streets, and the distant ringing of blacksmiths' hammers. Most Romans lived in small apartments or houses, often sharing their space with extended family or lodgers. These dwellings were typically made of brick and concrete, with a flat roof that could be used for additional living space, or even a small garden. Breakfast in Rome was a simple affair. Most Romans would begin their day with a meal of bread, cheese, and perhaps some olives or dried fruit. This would be washed down with a cup of posca, a sour wine diluted with water, which was a common drink throughout the empire. After breakfast, the men of the house would usually head off to work or to the forum, while the women would remain at home to oversee the household chores. The Roman workday was fairly short by modern standards, often ending in the early afternoon. This was partly due to the hot Mediterranean climate, which made it impractical to work during the hottest part of the day. After work, many Romans would head to the baths, a key part of Roman social life. These weren't just places to get clean, but were also spaces for socializing, exercising, and even conducting business. Roman baths were grand, elaborate buildings, often featuring a series of heated rooms and pools. Visitors would typically start in the tepidarium, a warm room that helped to open the pores, before moving to the hotter coldarium. After sweating in the heat, they would plunge into the cold waters of the frigidarium. Many baths also had gymnasiums, libraries, and even barbershops. The Romans took their bathing very seriously, viewing it as both a social duty and a mark of civilization. After their visit to the baths, Romans would return home for cena, the main meal of the day. This was a leisurely affair, often lasting several hours and featuring a range of dishes. A typical Roman cena might include a starter of eggs or a salad, followed by a main course of meat or fish, and finishing with a dessert of fruit or honeyed cakes. Wine was a common accompaniment to the meal, usually served watered down. Evening in Rome was a time for relaxation and entertainment. Many Romans would attend the theater or watch gladiatorial games at the Colosseum. Others might visit a tavern for a drink and some gambling, or enjoy a leisurely stroll around the city. As darkness fell, the streets of Rome would be lit by oil lamps, casting a warm, flickering glow over the city. Despite the many similarities to our own lives, it's important to remember that life in the Roman Empire was also marked by vast inequalities. Slavery was a fundamental part of Roman society, and the lives of slaves were often harsh and brutal. At the other end of the scale, the Roman elite lived lives of unimaginable luxury, feasting on exotic dishes and wearing garments of the finest silk. As we close this section of our journey through the Roman Empire, we are reminded of the extraordinary complexity and diversity of this ancient civilization. Rome was a city of contrasts, where grandeur and squalor existed side by side. It was a place where the mundane and the extraordinary were intertwined, creating a society that continues to fascinate us over 2,000 years later. As we continue our exploration in the sections to come, we will delve further into the intricacies of Roman society, shedding more light on this remarkable period in history. As we continue our journey through the historical era of the Roman Empire, let's delve into the daily life and customs during the Pax Romana, or Roman peace, a period of stability and relative peace that lasted from 27 BC to 180 AD. This era was marked by significant growth and prosperity, with the empire's boundaries extending from Britain in the north to Egypt in the south, Spain in the west, and Mesopotamia in the east. At the heart of the empire was the city of Rome itself, a bustling metropolis of over 1 million people. Its citizens were a diverse mix of not just Romans, but also Greeks, Jews, Gauls, Germans, Britons, Thracians, Egyptians, and many others from the far corners of the empire. Rome was the hub of trade, politics, and culture, with magnificent public buildings and luxurious private homes showcasing the wealth and power of the empire. Roman society was strictly hierarchical. At the top of the social pyramid were the senators, members of the oldest and wealthiest families of Rome, who held most of the political power. Below them were the equestrians, wealthy businessmen and professionals. The bulk of the population were the plebeians, free citizens who could vote but held little political power. At the bottom were the slaves, who had no rights and were considered property. Life in Rome was a blend of work, leisure, and public participation. Most Romans worked 6 days a week, with businesses and shops opening early in the morning and closing in the afternoon. Many Romans were traders, artisans, or farmers, though some held jobs as teachers, doctors, or civil servants. Slaves performed much of the manual labor, from construction work and rowing ships to household chores. Despite the long hours of work, Romans also knew how to enjoy life. Public baths were a popular place for socializing after a day's work, where Romans could relax, play games, and discuss politics. The Romans loved their games, from board games like tabula, similar to backgammon, to physical activities like wrestling and horse racing. The most popular spectator sport was the gladiatorial games, where trained fighters battled each other, or wild animals, in front of large, cheering crowds. Food was another important aspect of Roman life. Most Romans ate 3 meals a day: a light breakfast, a main meal at midday, and a light dinner in the evening. The diet of the common Roman consisted mostly of cereals, bread, cheese, fruits, vegetables, and occasionally meat. The wealthy, on the other hand, indulged in extravagant feasts with exotic dishes, fine wines, and elaborate desserts. Education was highly valued in Roman society. Wealthy families often employed tutors to educate their children at home, while poorer families sent their children to school. Boys and girls both received basic education, but higher education was reserved mostly for boys. Subjects taught included reading, writing, arithmetic, music, and rhetoric, with the latter being particularly important for those aspiring to a political career. Religion was a central aspect of Roman life, with every home having a small shrine to the household gods. The Romans honored a wide pantheon of gods and goddesses, each presiding over different aspects of life. Temples were common sights in Rome, and religious festivals, sacrifices, and processions were frequent occurrences. The Romans also believed in divination and consulted soothsayers for guidance on important decisions. As we immerse ourselves in the tapestry of daily life during the Pax Romana, we can better appreciate the complex society and culture that the Romans built. Join us in our next segment as we further explore the political and military systems of the Roman Empire and the extraordinary engineering feats that still inspire awe today. As you drift into sleep, imagine the bustling streets of Rome, the cheering crowds in the Colosseum, and the quiet whisper of prayers in the temples, and let the echoes of this ancient civilization lull you into peaceful dreams. As we delve deeper into the grandeur of the Roman Empire, we now shift our gaze towards the societal structure that formed the backbone of this great civilization. The structure of Roman society was very hierarchical, and it was broadly divided into the categories of patricians, who were the aristocratic families, the plebeians, the common people, and the slaves. The patricians were the elite of Roman society. They were the wealthy landowners and the political leaders. They lived in large, luxurious houses, often on hills overlooking the city, and they enjoyed a life of leisure and luxury. They would spend their days in the forum, discussing politics, attending religious festivals, or watching gladiatorial games. The patricians were also the ones who held high offices in the government, including the position of consul, the highest elected office in the Roman Republic. In stark contrast to the patricians, the plebeians were the common people of Rome. They were the farmers, the tradesmen, the soldiers, and the laborers. Though they made up the majority of the population, they had little political power and were often at the mercy of the patricians. However, over time, the plebeians were able to win certain rights and privileges, including the right to elect tribunes who could veto the actions of the consuls. Despite these gains, the life of a plebeian was often hard, with long hours of work and little time for leisure. However, it is important to note that the line between plebeians and patricians was not always clear-cut. Many plebeians were able to gain wealth and status through their efforts in trade or military service. These new men, as they were called, often tried to emulate the lifestyle of the patricians, building large houses and sponsoring public games and festivals. Slavery was a significant part of Roman society and the economy. Slaves were used for a variety of tasks, from agricultural labor to household chores. They could be bought and sold at markets, and they were often treated harshly by their masters. However, it was possible for a slave to earn their freedom, and freed slaves could become citizens, albeit with limited rights. The Romans had a unique way of looking at wealth and status. Unlike many societies, they did not necessarily equate wealth with virtue. Instead, they valued a concept they called dignitas, which can be loosely translated as dignity or prestige. This was a measure of a person's influence, reputation, and standing in society. A person could increase their dignitas by serving in the military, holding public office, or sponsoring public works. In terms of entertainment, the Romans had a love for spectacle and drama. The Colosseum, with its gladiatorial games, was the epitome of this. These games, often sponsored by wealthy patricians, would draw crowds of tens of thousands. Gladiators, who were often slaves or criminals, would fight to the death for the entertainment of the crowd. The Romans also loved theatre, and plays were often performed at festivals and religious ceremonies. Religion played a crucial role in Roman society, and it was deeply ingrained in every aspect of life. The Romans worshipped a pantheon of gods and goddesses, each with their own domain and responsibilities. Religious festivals were a common occurrence, and they often involved sacrifices, prayers, and processions. The Romans believed that by honoring the gods in these ways, they could ensure their favor and protection. Education was highly valued in Roman society, and it was seen as key to advancing one's status. Wealthy Romans would hire tutors for their children, who would teach them reading, writing, arithmetic, and the classics. The goal of education was not only to impart knowledge, but also to instill the values and virtues that were important to Roman society. In conclusion, life during the peak of the Roman Empire was characterized by a sharp division between the classes, a love for spectacle and drama, a deep respect for the gods, and a strong emphasis on education. Despite the hardships faced by many, it was a society marked by a rich culture and a deep sense of dignity and honor. It's easy to see how this complex and vibrant society was able to dominate the ancient world for so many centuries. In the previous sections, we have discussed the rise of the Roman Empire, its political structure, and the daily life of its citizens. In this part, we will delve into the social structure and the dynamics of Roman society during its peak. The Roman Empire, like any other ancient civilization, was marked by a rigid social hierarchy. At the top of this echelon were the patricians, who were the aristocrats, essentially the ruling class, who held most of the political power. They were the descendants of the original senators of Rome, chosen by Romulus, the mythological founder of Rome. Patrician families enjoyed many privileges, including the exclusive right to hold certain high offices such as consul and censor. Their wealth came from large estates, or latifundia, worked by slaves or tenant farmers. Below the patricians were the equestrians, also known as the equites, or the knight class. Initially, this class was defined by their ability to afford a horse for military service, but over time, it evolved into a wealthy business class. They were involved in various commercial activities, including tax collection, and often served as public contractors. Their economic power eventually allowed them to wield substantial political influence, despite not having the same formal political rights as the patricians. The largest class by far was the plebeians, who were free Roman citizens, not part of the patrician or equestrian classes. They were the artisans, merchants, farmers, and laborers who formed the backbone of the Roman economy. While they had the right to vote, they were initially barred from holding higher political offices. However, through collective action and protest, known as the conflict of the orders, the plebeians gradually won political concessions, including the right to hold the consulship and the establishment of tribunes, who were officials elected to protect their interests. At the very bottom of the social pyramid were the slaves and freedmen. Slavery was an integral part of Roman society, with slaves being used for various tasks, from household chores to gladiatorial combat. It's important to note that Roman slavery was not based on race, but rather on capture in war, punishment for crime, or the inability to pay debts. Freedmen, on the other hand, were former slaves who had either bought their freedom or had been granted it by their masters. Although freedmen had most of the rights of a Roman citizen, they were not viewed as social equals by the freeborn citizens. The social structure of Rome also had a gendered aspect. While men dominated the public sphere, women in Rome had a degree of personal and economic independence not common in the ancient world. They could own property, engage in business, and initiate divorce. However, they could not vote or hold public office. The Roman Empire was also renowned for its multiculturalism. With the expansion of the empire, a multitude of cultures, languages, and religions were absorbed into Roman society. This cultural diversity was evident in all aspects of Roman life, from its cuisine and fashion to its religious practices and artistic expressions. During the peak of the Roman Empire, social mobility was possible to an extent. A plebeian could amass wealth and join the equestrian class. A slave could be freed and become a wealthy businessman, and an equestrian could enter the Senate if he met the property qualification. However, these instances were exceptions rather than the norm, with the vast majority of individuals remaining in the social class they were born into. Overall, Roman society during the peak of the empire was a complex and stratified system that afforded different levels of privilege and power to its members. Despite its inherent inequalities, it also offered opportunities for advancement that were relatively rare in the ancient world. In the next section, we will explore the military structure and the causes behind the Roman Empire's remarkable military success. Please, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and prepare to journey into the world of the Roman legions. As the sun would set over the horizon, the city of Rome would transform into a vibrant, nocturnal metropolis. Street vendors would close their stalls, laborers would return from the fields, and the city's many taverns and bathhouses would begin to light up, their warm glow casting shadows on the cobbled streets. Among the most famous of these establishments was the Thermae of Caracalla. Constructed in the 3rd century AD, this grand bathhouse was much more than a place to bathe and socialize. It was a multifunctional leisure center, complete with libraries, gardens, and even a gymnasium. Patrons of the Thermae would start their visit in the apoditerium, a changing room lined with wooden lockers. From there, they would proceed to the tepidarium, a room of moderate temperature where they would begin the process of sweating out impurities. Then, they would move on to the caldarium, a hot bath, and finally the frigidarium, a cold pool designed to close the pores and invigorate the body. This ritual not only promoted hygiene, but also relaxation and camaraderie among the patrons, who ranged from politicians to poets, generals to gladiators. After a visit to the bathhouse, Romans might attend a banquet, another cornerstone of social life in the empire. These events were extravagant affairs, with guests reclining on couches and enjoying delicacies like roasted peacock and stuffed dormice. The wealthier the host, the more lavish the banquet, with some aristocrats employing professional entertainers to amuse their guests. Music, poetry, and even acrobatic performances were all common features of these events. But life in the Roman Empire was not all leisure and luxury. There was also a darker side to the society, one that was characterized by inequality and brutality. While the wealthy enjoyed the comforts of villas and banquets, the poor lived in squalid conditions, often in cramped multi-story apartment buildings known as insulae. These buildings were prone to collapse and fire, and the residents often lacked basic amenities like running water or sanitation. Moreover, the empire was built on the backs of slaves, who performed a wide range of tasks, from manual labor in the fields to domestic service in the homes of the wealthy. Slaves were considered property and were often treated harshly, and their only hope for freedom was through manumission, a process by which a slave could be freed by their master. Despite these challenges, the Roman Empire was a remarkably stable society, characterized by a strong legal system and efficient administration. The Romans were skilled engineers, constructing a vast network of roads and aqueducts that facilitated trade and communication across the empire. They were also innovative architects, pioneering the use of concrete and the arch, innovations that allowed them to build magnificent structures like the Colosseum and the Pantheon. Additionally, the Romans were known for their literary and artistic achievements. Poets like Virgil and Ovid penned epic works that are still studied today, while sculptors created realistic portraits of emperors and gods. Even everyday objects like pottery and jewelry were often intricately decorated, reflecting the Romans' appreciation for beauty and craftsmanship. In the end, life during the peak of the Roman Empire was a study in contrasts. It was a time of unprecedented wealth and power, but also of poverty and oppression. It was a society that valued education and culture, but also reveled in spectacle and excess. And though the empire would eventually fall, its influence can still be seen today in everything from our architecture to our legal system, our language to our culture. As we continue our journey through this fascinating period, we will delve deeper into the lives of the people who lived during this time, exploring their customs, beliefs, and daily routines. We will also examine the factors that led to the eventual decline and fall of the empire, a process that would usher in the Middle Ages and forever change the course of Western history. Until then, rest your eyes and dream of the grandeur of Rome, an empire that once was, and in many ways, still is. As we delve deeper into the heart of the Roman Empire at its peak, it's essential to explore the intricacies of daily life, particularly in the bustling metropolis of Rome itself. To truly immerse ourselves, let's imagine a day in the life of an average Roman citizen. The Roman day, known as dies, began at sunrise around 6 a.m. and ended at sunset. Their day was divided into 12 hours, or horae, but since the length of daylight varied with the seasons, the length of these hours was not fixed, making their concept of time fluid and somewhat different from ours. The daily life of a Roman citizen was dictated by their social status. The elite patricians began their day with a light meal, the ientaculum, typically consisting of bread, cheese, and sometimes olives or dried fruits. This was followed by the morning salutatio, where clients or clientes paid their respects to their patronus or patron. This was a key aspect of the patron-client relationship, a fundamental social dynamic of Roman society. Clients, often lower-class citizens, provided services and support to their patron in exchange for protection and aid. If our imagined Roman citizen was a plebeian or commoner, their day would look quite different. After a similarly light meal, they would head to work. Many worked as farmers, laborers, or tradesmen, while others served in the homes of wealthier Romans. The bustling Roman markets, or Masella, were filled with stalls selling a variety of goods, from fruits and vegetables, to fish and meat, to fabrics and jewelry. The markets were a hub of activity, filled with the sounds of haggling vendors, the scent of fresh produce, and the sight of Romans from all walks of life crossing paths. Around midday, the Romans took a short break for their lunch, or prandium. This was a quick, often cold meal, as the Mediterranean climate could be quite hot during the day. After prandium, work resumed until late afternoon. For the wealthy, this could include involvement in politics, managing their estates or businesses, or for the intellectual elite, studying philosophy or literature. The less privileged continued their labor, whether it was tilling the fields, crafting goods, or serving in a patrician household. In the late afternoon, around 3 p.m. by our modern reckoning, Romans would visit the public baths, or thermae. These were not merely places for hygiene, but social and recreational centers where Romans could meet friends, exercise, and even conduct business. The baths were an architectural marvel of the Roman Empire, with facilities including hot and cold pools, steam rooms, and gymnasiums. Our Roman citizen, regardless of their social standing, would have spent a considerable amount of time here, as it was an integral part of their daily routine. As evening approached, the main meal of the day, the cena, was served. For the wealthy, this was often a lavish affair, with multiple courses and a variety of delicacies, from oysters to peacock tongues. For the common Roman, cena was simpler, usually consisting of a grain-based dish, vegetables, and occasionally meat or fish. Following cena was the commissatio, a drinking party that marked the end of the day. The wealthy often hosted these parties in their luxurious homes, while the less affluent might gather at a local tavern, or popina. As the wine flowed, Romans would engage in lively conversation, play games, and enjoy entertainment such as music or performances. As we imagine the life and routine of our Roman citizen, it's important to remember that while the Roman Empire was a society of great wealth and advancement, it was also a society of stark contrasts. The extravagance of the wealthy was balanced by the hardship of the poor. The grandeur of the public buildings contrasted with the simplicity of the common homes. Yet regardless of status, all Romans shared in the rhythm of the dies, the vibrant culture, and the collective identity of being part of one of the most influential civilizations in history. This exploration of a day in the life of a Roman citizen offers us a glimpse into the complexities and nuances of daily life during the peak of the Roman Empire. As we continue our journey, we'll delve deeper into the societal structures, cultural practices, and historical events that shaped this remarkable civilization. As we delve deeper into the rich tapestry of the Roman Empire at its peak, we find ourselves wandering through the bustling streets of Rome, a city thriving with unparalleled cultural and economic prosperity. Outsiders were drawn towards Rome's magnificence, its architectural grandeur, and the promise of a life full of opportunities and adventures. The city, during this period, was not merely a geographic location, but a potent symbol of power, civilization, and grandeur. Imagine being a Roman citizen in the first 2 centuries AD. As dawn breaks, you would be awakened by the distant hum of the city coming to life. The smell of fresh bread wafts from the bakeries. The clatter of metal from blacksmith shops reverberates through the narrow alleyways, and the clamor of traders and merchants fills the air with an infectious energy. As you step out onto the cobblestone streets, you'd see a variety of people going about their daily routines. The majority of the Roman population comprised of artisans, laborers, and small-time merchants. They were the backbone of the Roman economy, contributing significantly to its prosperity. The middle class, or the equestrians, were successful business owners and government officials. And then there were the patricians, the upper class of the society, who were large landowners and held high-ranking political positions. Education was highly valued in Roman society. Wealthy families employed a private tutor or sent their children to a ludus, where they were taught grammar, rhetoric, philosophy, and physical education. The less privileged, however, had limited access to education, their knowledge often restricted to what they learned from their parents or through apprenticeships. Despite the social disparities, Roman society was bound by a shared love for entertainment and leisure. Public bathhouses, or thermae, were popular social spaces where Romans of all classes could relax, exercise, and engage in intellectual discourse. Similarly, the amphitheaters, the most famous being the Colosseum, were venues for a variety of public spectacles, from gladiatorial contests to dramatic performances. The Roman diet was simple yet nourishing, with staples like wheat, olive oil, and wine. Wealthy Romans had the luxury of indulging in elaborate feasts with a variety of meats, seafood, fruits, and desserts. The less fortunate survived on a more austere diet of porridge, bread, and sometimes a small portion of meat or fish. The Roman Empire was renowned for its advanced legal system, which laid the foundation for many modern legal principles. The law governed all aspects of Roman life, from property rights to criminal proceedings. It was administered by a complex hierarchy of officials and courts, with the emperor at the top, acting as the supreme judge. In terms of religion, the Romans worshipped a pantheon of gods and goddesses, each governing an aspect of life. They believed that maintaining a good relationship with the gods would ensure peace and prosperity. This belief was manifested through various rituals, sacrifices, and public festivals. As we step back from this vivid snapshot of a day in the life of a Roman citizen, we appreciate the empire's rich cultural diversity, advanced societal structure, and the pulsating energy that coursed through its core. The Roman Empire, at its zenith, was not simply an epoch of power and territorial expansion, but a crucible of human experiences and societal advancements, the echoes of which can still be heard in our modern world. In the next section, we will explore the political intricacies that governed this magnificent empire. But for now, let your thoughts wander through the grand streets of Rome as you drift into a peaceful slumber. As we continue our journey into the heart of the Roman Empire at its zenith, we delve into the intricacies of Roman politics and the sheer dominance of the Roman military. The Roman Empire, in its grandeur and glory, was a complex structure of governance that was a blend of autocracy and democracy. The emperor held absolute power, but a semblance of a republic was maintained, with the Senate continuing to hold legislative and advisory roles. The Roman political system was a unique blend of monarchy, oligarchy, and democracy, a combination that was unheard of during that time. Although the emperor was the supreme ruler, the Senate, comprising of aristocrats, played a significant role in the governance of the empire. The Senate was a vestige of the Roman Republic and held considerable influence, providing a check to the absolute rule of the emperor. Senators were appointed by the emperor, and they held their position for life, unless they were expelled for misconduct. The Senate's main responsibilities were to enact laws, control finances, and administer justice. While the political structure of the Roman Empire was intricate, the military might of Rome was straightforward. It was the most formidable army of its time. The Roman military was a well-organized, disciplined, and efficient fighting force. It was divided into legions, each consisting of about 5,000 soldiers. The legions were further divided into centuries, each led by a centurion. The Roman military was a meritocracy, with promotions based on courage and competence rather than social status. The military might of Rome was not solely due to the discipline and organization of its army. The Romans were also innovators in military technology. They developed the pilum, a type of spear that was designed to bend upon impact, making it impossible for the enemy to throw it back. The Romans also engineered roads and bridges, which facilitated the quick movement of their troops and supplies. The Roman Empire was not just a military and political powerhouse. It was also a hub of culture and learning. Roman literature, art, architecture, and philosophy still influence our world today. The Romans were great patrons of the arts. Emperors often commissioned grand architectural projects, such as the Colosseum, the Pantheon, and the Baths of Caracalla, to demonstrate their wealth and power. Roman literature was rich and varied, with works ranging from epic poems to philosophical treatises. The works of Virgil, Ovid, Horace, and Seneca are still studied and admired today. Roman philosophy, particularly Stoicism, had a significant influence on the empire. The Stoics believed in the importance of virtue and the pursuit of wisdom. They taught that one should strive to maintain tranquility and peace of mind, regardless of the external circumstances. The culmination of Roman culture, politics, and military might was evident in their legal system. Roman law was a sophisticated system of statutes, legal principles, and court decisions. It was based on the principle of justice and the rule of law. The Romans created a legal system that was designed to be fair and just, and it served as the foundation for many modern legal systems. As we reflect on the grandeur of the Roman Empire, we must also acknowledge its shortcomings. There was a significant gap between the rich and the poor, with a small elite enjoying immense wealth, while the majority of the population lived in poverty. Slavery was common, with slaves making up a significant portion of the population. Despite these flaws, the Roman Empire remains one of the most influential civilizations in human history. As you drift closer to sleep, imagine the bustling streets of Rome, with its grand architecture, busy markets, and lively forums. Imagine the senators debating in the Senate House, the soldiers training in the military camps, and the philosophers discussing the nature of life in the public squares. The Roman Empire, in all its complexity and grandeur, truly was a marvel of human civilization. As we continue our exploration, let the echoes of the past lull you into a peaceful slumber, dreaming of marble columns, murmuring fountains, and the eternal city at the heart of an empire. As we continue to explore the complexities of life during the peak of the Roman Empire, we now turn our focus towards its economy and trade. Rome's economy was a complex and multifaceted system, which was interwoven with their political structure and cultural norms. Its strength was based on agriculture, trade, and slave labor. The vast expanse of the Roman Empire, which spanned 3 continents, brought with it a wide variety of trade goods and opportunities. At the heart of Rome's economy was agriculture. A majority of Rome's populace was involved in farming in some manner. From the rich patricians who owned vast estates, to the poor plebeians who tilled the soil, everyone had a stake in the harvest. Grain, particularly wheat, was the staple crop, but vineyards and olive groves were also prevalent. The rich soil of the Italian peninsula, coupled with the temperate Mediterranean climate, made it ideal for agriculture. The production of food, was not just for local consumption, but also for export to other parts of the empire. Rome's agricultural surplus was one of the key factors that allowed it to sustain its vast population and military. Trade was another vital part of the Roman economy. Rome was a hub of commerce, with goods flowing in from all corners of the empire. The Mediterranean Sea, often referred to as the Roman Lake, was the chief conduit for this trade. Ships laden with grain from Egypt, spices from the east, and tin from Britain would dock at the bustling ports of Rome. The city's markets were filled with a plethora of goods from all over the known world, a testament to the empire's reach and power. Local craftsmen also contributed to the trade, producing goods such as pottery, textiles, and metalwork, which were exported across the empire. One cannot discuss the Roman economy without mentioning slave labor. Slavery was a deeply ingrained part of Roman society, and it underpinned much of the economy. Slaves worked in all sectors, from agriculture to crafts, and even in the homes of the wealthy. They were bought and sold in markets, and their labor contributed significantly to Rome's wealth and prosperity. While the treatment of slaves varied, their lives were often harsh and filled with hardships. Despite the prosperity and abundance, the Roman economy also had its share of problems. Inflation was a recurring issue, brought on by the empire's constant military campaigns and the resultant debasement of the currency. The gap between the rich and the poor was stark, with the bulk of the wealth concentrated in the hands of a small elite. This socio-economic divide would eventually contribute to the empire's decline. However, during its peak, the Roman Empire was a testament to the power of economic organization and trade. Its ability to harness the resources of a vast territory and channel them into a single, unified economy was a remarkable feat. The impact of Rome's economic system can still be felt today in the foundations of modern economies and trade practices. So, as you lay back and let your thoughts drift, imagine the bustling Roman markets filled with goods from distant lands, the rustling wheat fields under the Mediterranean sun, and the clinking of coins changing hands. The Roman economy was a complex machine, but one that powered the empire and shaped the world in many ways. As you drift closer to sleep, let the echoes of this ancient world lull you into peaceful dreams. Tomorrow, we will explore more facets of life during the peak of the Roman Empire. Good night. As we continue our exploration of life during the peak of the Roman Empire, we now turn our attention to the realm of entertainment and the arts. This was a period when Rome was at the pinnacle of its cultural and artistic achievements, and the city was a hub for artists, writers, and performers from across the empire. The theatre was one of the most popular forms of entertainment during this time, and a wide variety of plays were performed, from high drama to ribald comedy. The actors in these plays were often slaves or freedmen, and they performed in masks, which could be highly exaggerated to depict different characters. The Romans also enjoyed pantomime, a form of performance that involved a solo dancer telling a story through movement, while a chorus sang or spoke the lines. Despite the lack of physical theatres in the early days of the empire, the Romans had a strong tradition of dramatic performances, and it was not uncommon for temporary stages to be built for specific festivals or events. The Romans also had a great love for spectacle, and nothing embodied this more than the gladiatorial games. These games, which were often held in the grand amphitheaters that dotted the empire, were a chance for the Romans to display their wealth and power. They featured a range of events, from chariot races to animal hunts. But the most famous were the fights between gladiators. These were typically slaves or condemned criminals who were trained to fight for the entertainment of the crowd. Despite the brutal nature of these contests, they were incredibly popular, and the best gladiators could achieve a level of fame and fortune that was otherwise unattainable for people of their status. Music was another important part of Roman life. and it was used in a variety of contexts, from religious ceremonies to public parades. The Romans had a wide range of musical instruments, including the lyre, the flute, and the tuba, a long trumpet-like instrument. Singing was also popular, and many Roman poems were designed to be sung. The Romans also developed a form of notation to record their music, although sadly, very few examples of this have survived to the present day. In the visual arts, the Romans demonstrated a keen sense of realism and a fascination with capturing the world as they saw it. This can be seen in their sculpture, which often depicted people in a very lifelike manner, with detailed features and expressions. They also excelled in creating detailed mosaics and frescoes, which depicted scenes from everyday life, mythology, and history. These works were often used to decorate public buildings and private homes, and they give us a fascinating insight into the world of the Romans. Literature was another area where the Romans excelled. The empire produced a number of great writers, including poets like Virgil and Ovid, historians like Tacitus and Livy, and philosophers like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius. These works covered a range of topics, from history and philosophy to love and mythology, and they have had a profound influence on Western literature. Education was also highly valued in Roman society, and there was a strong emphasis on learning and intellectual pursuits. Children were taught to read and write, and they were also educated in subjects like mathematics, music, and philosophy. Education was seen as a way to prepare children for their adult roles in society, and it was also a means of instilling them with the values and ideals of the Roman Empire. Despite the many advancements and achievements of the Roman Empire, it's important to remember that life during this time was not without its challenges. The society was highly stratified, with a vast gap between the rich and the poor. Slavery was widespread, and many people lived in conditions of extreme hardship. However, for those who were able to navigate the complexities of Roman society, there were also opportunities for wealth, power, and cultural enrichment. As we move forward in our exploration of the Roman Empire, we will delve deeper into the complexities of Roman society, examining the political, economic, and social structures that underpinned the empire's success. We will also explore the factors that led to the empire's eventual decline, shedding light on the fragility of even the most powerful of empires. For now, let these images of Roman life linger in your mind, a testament to the ingenuity, creativity, and resilience of a civilization that left an indelible mark on the course of history. Now, as we set aside our exploration for the night, allow the calm rhythms of Roman life to guide you towards a peaceful sleep. Our journey through the historical tapestry of the Roman Empire continues as we delve deeper into the complexities of daily life during its apex, a period distinguished by vast territorial expansion, relative peace, and notable cultural advancements. Imagine the bustling streets of Rome, the heart of the empire, teeming with people from all walks of life, from affluent senators to humble slaves. The Roman Empire at its peak was a melting pot of cultures, a vivid tapestry of intertwined destinies that shaped the course of history. Let us start our exploration with the typical Roman home, or domus. Architectural advancements allowed the Romans to build multi-story residences, a testament to their engineering prowess. For the wealthy, these homes were often sprawling, luxurious affairs, complete with intricate mosaics, frescoes, and statues. At the center of the domus was the atrium, a courtyard that often housed the impluvium, a basin to collect rainwater. This open space, enlivened by the play of light and shadow, was the heart of the Roman home, a place for socializing, conducting business, and even religious ceremonies. However, this picture of domestic luxury was not the standard for all Romans. The majority of the population, particularly in Rome, lived in insulae, multi-story apartment buildings. These structures, sometimes reaching 6 or 7 stories high, were often cramped and lacked the amenities of the domus. The lower floors, sturdier and less prone to fire, were typically occupied by the wealthier tenants, while the higher, more precarious floors were home to the less fortunate. The Roman diet was heavily influenced by the Mediterranean climate and the empire's vast territories. The staple foods included grains, primarily wheat, which was used to make bread. Romans also consumed a lot of vegetables, legumes, and fruits, both fresh and dried. Meat was a luxury, typically enjoyed by the wealthy or on special occasions. Fish and seafood, however, were common, especially in coastal regions. One of the most striking aspects of Roman culinary culture was the use of garum, a fermented fish sauce that Romans used as a flavor enhancer, much like we use salt today. The production of this sauce was a significant industry in many Roman towns. However, its smell was reportedly so overpowering that factories were often located on the outskirts of towns. In the domain of fashion, the Romans are perhaps best known for the toga, a large woolen garment that was wrapped around the body. While it has come to symbolize Roman citizenry, the toga was generally reserved for formal occasions due to its cumbersome nature. On a daily basis, most Romans, both men and women, wore a simple tunic. The quality and decoration of the tunic often indicated the wearer's social status. For example, senators wore tunics with a broad purple stripe, while equestrians, members of the lower aristocracy, wore a narrower stripe. The Romans were also fond of jewelry, with both men and women adorning themselves with rings, bracelets, necklaces, and earrings. Wealthier Romans often had jewelry made of gold and adorned with precious gems, while those of more modest means wore pieces made from less expensive materials. On the topic of leisure, the Romans had a penchant for public spectacles. The Colosseum, perhaps the most iconic structure from this period, was the site of gladiatorial contests, mock naval battles, and other public spectacles. Theatre was another popular form of entertainment, with comedies being particularly well liked. Most towns and cities in the empire had a theatre, and performances were often a part of religious festivals. Trade was a vital part of life in the Roman Empire, with goods flowing in from all corners of the empire. The marketplace, or forum, was the center of commercial life, with merchants selling everything from foodstuffs to clothing to exotic goods from far-off lands. The Romans also developed an impressive road system, which facilitated trade and military movements. In this period of Roman history, we see a society characterized by contrast and diversity, from the luxurious homes of the wealthy to the cramped apartments of the poor, from the opulent feasts of the aristocracy to the simple meals of ordinary citizens. The Roman Empire was a complex and vibrant world. As we delve deeper into this fascinating era, we will further explore the intricacies of daily life, the cultural practices, and the societal structures that defined the Roman Empire at its peak. So close your eyes, imagine the bustling streets of ancient Rome, and let history come alive. As we delve deeper into the heart of the Roman Empire, we journey into the bustling city centers, where the day-to-day life of the common Roman citizen unfolded. The typical Roman city was a marvel of engineering, with well-paved roads, intricate sewage systems, and impressive structures of brick and stone. One of the most iconic structures, the amphitheater, served as the hub of Roman social life, where citizens gathered to enjoy public spectacles and games. These massive arenas could hold thousands of spectators and were architectural marvels of their time. The Roman household, or domus, was another crucial part of Roman life. The domus was not just a physical structure. It was a social unit that included the head of the household, his wife, children, and slaves. Wealthy Romans lived in luxurious urban villas, adorned with intricate mosaics, frescoes, and statuary. These homes had many rooms, including a dining room, bedrooms, a kitchen, and often a small garden. The poor, on the other hand, lived in cramped multi-story apartment buildings called insulae. These were often poorly constructed and prone to fires. Life in the Roman Empire was stratified, and one's social status greatly affected one's quality of life. At the top of the social hierarchy were the patricians, the wealthy aristocratic class. Below them were the plebeians, or common people. Slaves were at the bottom of the social structure. Despite the stark differences in living conditions, all Romans, regardless of their status, enjoyed certain public amenities like public baths, forums, and amphitheaters. Roman cuisine was heavily influenced by the Mediterranean, with olives, grapes, and wheat forming the cornerstone of the Roman diet. Wealthy Romans dined on exotic dishes like peacock tongues and dormice, while the common people subsisted on a diet of bread, porridge, and vegetables. Wine was a staple beverage for all strata of society, often diluted with water. The Romans were a deeply religious people, with a pantheon of gods and goddesses whom they worshipped in elaborate temples and shrines. They believed in the divine origins of their city and attributed their military success and prosperity to the favor of the gods. Religion was deeply intertwined with the state, and the emperor was often deified and worshipped as a god. Education was highly valued in Roman society. Wealthy children were taught at home by private tutors, learning subjects like rhetoric, philosophy, and mathematics. Poorer children, however, often lacked access to formal education and learned trades from their parents instead. Despite this, literacy rates in the Roman Empire were relatively high compared to other ancient civilizations. Roman law was a complex system, built on centuries of tradition and precedent. Roman law influenced many subsequent legal systems, and many of its principles are still in use today. Notably, the Romans were among the first to establish the concept of innocent until proven guilty. Roman society was also marked by its love for leisure and entertainment. The Romans enjoyed public spectacles like gladiatorial games and chariot races, held in massive arenas like the Colosseum. Theatre and music were also popular forms of entertainment, with many Romans playing musical instruments and attending plays in their free time. In the Roman Empire, life was a blend of luxury and hardship, of grand spectacles and simple pleasures. It was a society marked by its ingenuity, its love for spectacle, and its deeply ingrained social hierarchies. Despite the many challenges and inequalities, the people of Rome built a civilization that has left an indelible mark on history. As we continue our journey through the Roman Empire, we delve deeper into the lives of the Romans, exploring their hopes, dreams, and daily struggles. As we delve deeper into the day-to-day existence in the Roman Empire's pinnacle, we arrive at the realm of education and intellectual pursuits. The Romans, much like us today, understood the value of a well-rounded education. However, the form and content of this education differed significantly from our modern conception of schooling. Let's paint a vivid picture of a Roman child's educational journey, an important aspect of life during the peak of the Roman Empire. In the early morning, the Roman child, typically a boy, would be sent off to the house of a literator, or reading and writing teacher. Girls, while not entirely excluded from education, often received a less structured, less extensive education at home, focusing mainly on domestic skills. The literator would instruct the children in the basics of reading and writing in Latin, the lingua franca of the empire. This education was not free, and the cost would vary based on the teacher's reputation. The teacher's room would be filled with the hubbub of children reciting their lessons aloud, a far cry from the quiet, individualized study we associate with modern classrooms. After mastering the basics, the child would proceed to a grammaticus, a teacher of grammar and literature. Here, the child would delve into the works of great Roman and Greek authors, absorbing the cultural and moral lessons these works conveyed. The child would also learn to write in Greek, as bilingualism was highly valued in Roman society. The grammaticus would also provide instruction in rhetoric, the art of persuasive speaking, a skill highly prized in a society where public speaking played a crucial role. If the family could afford it, the final stage of education would involve a rhetor, a teacher of advanced rhetoric and philosophy. This was the equivalent of a university education in modern terms, and it prepared the student for a career in politics and law, the most prestigious professions in Roman society. However, the intellectual life of the Roman Empire was not limited to formal education. The Romans were great admirers of Greek culture and intellectual achievements, and they absorbed much of this into their own civilization. Libraries, both public and private, were widespread, filled with scrolls containing the works of great Greek and Roman thinkers. There were also public lectures and debates, where the educated elite would gather to discuss philosophical and ethical issues. Despite this focus on intellectual pursuits, the Roman education system was not without its critics. Some Romans lamented the focus on Greek culture and language, believing it detracted from traditional Roman values. There was also criticism of the harsh discipline in Roman schools, with corporal punishment a common occurrence. But whether one loved or loathed the Roman education system, it is undeniable that it was an integral part of life during the peak of the Roman Empire. It shaped the minds and values of the Roman citizens, influencing everything from politics to literature. And though it may seem foreign to us, with its emphasis on rote learning and physical discipline, it is, in many ways, the ancestor of our own education system. As we drift away from the bustling classrooms and quiet libraries of ancient Rome, we find ourselves standing at the threshold of a Roman home, ready to explore the intimate sphere of domestic life. But that is a story for another time. For now, let us close our eyes and imagine the echoing voices of Roman children reciting their lessons, the rustling of parchment scrolls in a library, the animated discussions in a public lecture. Let these images lull you into a peaceful slumber, carrying you away on the wings of history. As we continue our journey through the peak of the Roman Empire, we find ourselves stepping into the atmosphere of a bustling marketplace. Markets, or Macella as they were known in Latin, were an integral part of Roman life, serving as the hub of economic activity and social interaction. These were not just places for buying and selling, but venues where news was exchanged, politics discussed, and friendships formed. The marketplace was a bustling array of stalls, peddlers, and shoppers. It was not uncommon to see farmers selling their produce directly to the public, fishermen hawking their fresh catches, or bakers enticing passerby with the aroma of freshly baked bread. Other vendors sold items such as clothing, pottery, household items, and even slaves. The market was filled with the clamor of haggling and the clatter of coins. A foreigner stepping into the market might find it chaotic, but for the Romans, it was an organized cacophony, a dance they were well accustomed to. The Roman diet was simple but healthy. The staple food was grain, which was ground into flour and baked into bread. Olive oil and wine were also staples. The Romans enjoyed a variety of fruits and vegetables, including apples, pears, cherries, onions, leeks, lentils, and beans. Meat was a luxury, usually reserved for special occasions. The Romans also relished fish and seafood, which were readily available due to the empire's vast coastline. As the sun began to set, the market would gradually empty out, but the heart of Roman social life did not stop beating. The evening was a time for relaxation and entertainment. The Romans were avid fans of the theatre, with comedy being particularly popular. Plays were performed in large outdoor theatres, where people could sit and enjoy the performance while munching on snacks. However, the most popular form of entertainment was undoubtedly the gladiatorial games. These were violent spectacles where gladiators, usually slaves or criminals, fought each other or wild animals to the death. Despite the brutal nature of these games, they were incredibly popular, drawing huge crowds. The roar of the crowd, the clash of weapons, the drama of life and death played out in the arena. This was the spectacle that the Romans craved. Yet the Romans were not just about blood and spectacle. They were also deeply interested in education and philosophy. Schools were common throughout the empire, where children learned reading, writing, arithmetic, and rhetoric. The Romans also had a deep respect for Greek culture and philosophy, and many Romans studied the works of Greek philosophers such as Plato and Aristotle. The Romans also had a sophisticated legal system. They believed in the rule of law and justice. The 12 Tables, the earliest code of Roman law, laid out the legal rights and responsibilities of citizens. The laws covered a wide range of issues, from property rights to criminal law. The Romans also had a system of courts and judges to enforce the law. As the day drew to a close, the Romans would return to their homes, which varied greatly depending on their wealth. The poor lived in cramped apartments in multi-story buildings called insulae. These buildings were often poorly constructed and prone to fires. The wealthy, on the other hand, lived in luxurious villas with spacious rooms, beautiful mosaics, and lush gardens. As we leave the bustling streets and head towards the quiet of the night, we can reflect on the complexity and richness of Roman life during its peak. It was a time of prosperity and growth, but also of great inequality and violence. Yet, despite these contradictions, it was a society that left an indelible mark on world history. As we drift into slumber, we carry with us the echoes of the Roman Empire, a civilization that continues to fascinate and inspire us to this day. In the last section, we concluded our journey through the bustling markets of ancient Rome, breathing in the heady scent of spices, herbs, and olives, and listening to the dynamic sound of coinage, bargaining, and the myriad languages spoken by the diverse populace. Now, let us turn our attention to the heart of the Roman Empire, its government and politics. Rome, at the height of its power, was an oligarchy masquerading as a republic. The government was essentially controlled by a number of powerful families, known as patricians, who held the majority of political power. These families often had deep roots in the Roman society, tracing their lineage back to Rome's earliest days. Despite this concentration of power, the Romans were deeply proud of their republican ideals and made a show of electing 2 consuls each year to manage the affairs of the state. The consuls were the highest-ranking officials in the government, sharing the executive power. They were chosen from among the senators, a group of about 300 men who were the real power behind the Roman government. The Senate was the primary legislative body, responsible for making laws and decisions about war and peace. Senators were also responsible for electing the consuls, which often led to intense political rivalries and even bloodshed. In addition to the consuls and the Senate, there were several other important positions in the Roman government. These included the praetors, who acted as judges, the aediles, who were in charge of public buildings and festivals, the quaestors, who managed the state treasury, and the censors, who maintained the census and moral standards of the state. To balance the power of the patrician class, there were also institutions that allowed the participation of the common people, or plebeians, in the Roman government. The plebeians could elect their own officials, known as tribunes, who had the power to veto the decisions of the Senate. This was a crucial safeguard against the absolute rule of the patricians and allowed for a limited form of democracy in the Roman Republic. Despite these democratic trappings, corruption was rampant in the Roman government. Elections were often rigged, and bribery was a common practice. Wealthy individuals could buy political offices, and politicians often used their positions to amass personal fortunes. This corruption was one of the factors that led to the decline and fall of the Roman Republic and the rise of the Roman Empire. In the late Republic, a series of civil wars and political crises led to the rise of Julius Caesar, a charismatic general who seized power and declared himself dictator for life. After his assassination, his adopted son, Octavian, later known as Augustus, became the first Roman emperor, marking the end of the Roman Republic and the beginning of the Roman Empire. Under the empire, the Senate lost much of its power, becoming more of a symbolic institution. The emperor held absolute power, making all major decisions and controlling the military. However, the emperors often maintained the illusion of a republic, with the Senate and other institutions still functioning, albeit with greatly reduced power. This was the political structure that governed the vast Roman Empire, from Britain in the north to Egypt in the south, and from Spain in the west to Syria in the east. It was a complex and often corrupt system, but it managed to maintain control over a vast and diverse territory for many centuries. As we delve deeper into the Roman Empire's political landscape, we can begin to see the intricate web of power and politics that made Rome one of the most fascinating civilizations in history. In the next section, we will explore the day-to-day life of an average Roman citizen, from the working-class plebeians to the wealthy patricians. Join me as we step into the shoes of a Roman citizen and experience the sights, sounds, and experiences of living in the heart of the Roman Empire. In the heart of the Roman Empire, the city of Rome itself was a marvel to behold. As we transition into the 6th chapter of our journey through life in the Roman Empire during its peak, our focus shifts towards the urban landscape and the architectural marvels that still, to this day, inspire awe. Rome was a city unlike any other in the ancient world. It was vast, sprawling, and teeming with a population that could have been close to 1 million people. The city was divided into neighborhoods, or vici, each with its own local officials and responsibilities. These neighborhoods were a mixture of residences, businesses, and public buildings, all intermingled in a way that would be familiar to anyone living in a modern city. The homes of the wealthy, or domus, were opulent and luxurious. They were often built around a central open-air courtyard, or atrium, which served as a sort of hub for the house. Off of this atrium could be found various rooms, including dining rooms, bedrooms, and even private baths. These homes were adorned with intricate mosaics, vibrant frescoes, and other forms of art, speaking to the wealth and status of their owners. Despite the grandeur of these domus, the majority of Rome's citizens lived in apartment buildings, or insulae. These buildings could be several stories high and were often cramped and poorly constructed. In fact, fires were a common occurrence in the insulae, and there were even instances of buildings collapsing due to poor construction or maintenance. Despite these conditions, the insulae provided homes for the vast majority of Rome's populace. Public buildings were another hallmark of the Roman cityscape. The most famous of these, the Colosseum, was built during the reign of Emperor Vespasian and could hold up to 50,000 spectators. This amphitheater was the site of gladiatorial games, animal hunts, and even mock naval battles. Other public buildings included the Circus Maximus, a chariot racing stadium that could hold up to 150,000 spectators, and the Roman Forum, which served as the political and economic heart of the city. The city of Rome was also home to a vast network of aqueducts, which brought fresh water from distant sources into the city. These aqueducts, some of which still stand today, are a testament to the engineering prowess of the Romans. The water supplied by these aqueducts was used in public baths, fountains, and even in some private homes. Public baths, or thermae, were a central part of Roman social life. These establishments offered not just the chance to bathe, but also opportunities for exercise, relaxation, and socialization. They were often grand structures, complete with hot and cold bathing rooms, swimming pools, and even libraries. Throughout the city, sanitation and public health were important considerations. The Romans built an extensive sewer system, known as the Cloaca Maxima, which drained waste from the city into the Tiber River. They also implemented measures to ensure the availability of food and to prevent the spread of diseases, including the appointment of public doctors and the establishment of grain doles. As we wander the ancient streets of Rome, we can't help but marvel at the grandeur of this city. It's a place where the opulence of the wealthy lived side by side with the struggles of the common man, where the achievements of Roman engineering stood tall against the backdrop of daily life, and where the echoes of history still resound in every stone and every corner. As we drift deeper into the night and closer to the realm of dreams, let us remember the Rome of old and envision the lives lived amongst its streets and buildings. A city of dreamers, builders, artists, and warriors. A city that was, and still is, a testament to the heights that humanity can reach. As the peak of the Roman Empire dawned, the streets of Rome began to bustle and hum with an unprecedented flurry of activity. Trade was the lifeblood of this burgeoning society, and the city's markets were always teeming with vendors selling everything from fresh produce and livestock to luxurious silks and spices imported from the East. The empire's extensive network of well-maintained roads and sea routes facilitated the transportation of goods from the farthest reaches of the empire to the heart of Rome, contributing to the city's status as a global trade hub. The daily life of a Roman citizen was largely dictated by their social status. The wealthy patricians who sat at the top of Roman society lived lives of unimaginable opulence. They resided in grand villas, adorned with elaborate frescoes and intricate mosaics, often situated on large estates outside the city. These homes were symbols of their owners' wealth and power, and they often hosted lavish banquets and parties where guests would indulge in fine wine and entertainment. In stark contrast, the plebeians, the common folk, lived in cramped apartments, known as insulae, located in the city's bustling heart. Despite their modest living conditions, these lower-class Romans took great pride in their community and participated actively in public life. They would frequent the city's numerous bathhouses, markets, and amphitheaters, indulging in the empire's myriad public entertainments. The Roman Empire was renowned for its public amenities, many of which were the first of their kind. The city boasted an extensive aqueduct system, which supplied clean water to public fountains, baths, and private homes. The Roman baths, in particular, were a marvel of engineering and a hub of social activity. Citizens of all classes would gather here to bathe, socialize, and discuss politics. The baths were often grand architectural feats, with heated floors, steam rooms, and large pools filled with mineral-rich water. Education was also a crucial facet of Roman society. While formal schooling was not state-sponsored or mandatory, many Roman parents hired private tutors to educate their children. Learning was highly prized, and Roman children were taught to read, write, and speak eloquently in Latin and often Greek. They were also instructed in philosophy, music, mathematics, and astronomy, reflecting the empire's deep respect for knowledge and intellectual pursuits. Religion played a central role in the daily lives of Romans. They worshipped a pantheon of gods and goddesses, each with their unique powers and domains. The Romans were deeply superstitious, and they sought the favor of their deities through prayers, sacrifices, and elaborate rituals. Temples dedicated to these gods dotted the city, serving as places of worship and community gatherings. The Roman judicial system was highly advanced for its time. Citizens were presumed innocent until proven guilty, and they had the right to defend themselves in court. However, the The courts were often biased in favor of the wealthy and influential, and corruption was rife. As the sun set on the city, the Roman nightlife would come alive. Taverns and inns would fill with patrons seeking food, drink, and companionship. Street performers would entertain passers-by with music, dance, and theatre. The city's amphitheaters would host gladiatorial contests, chariot races, and theatrical performances, drawing crowds of thousands. Despite the hardships and inequalities, life during the peak of the Roman Empire was vibrant and full of opportunities. It was a time of intellectual growth, architectural innovation, and cultural exchange. It was an era where a simple plebeian could rise to become a respected senator, and where the achievements of individuals and the society as a whole were celebrated with great aplomb. The Roman Empire, at its peak, was a testament to humanity's potential for progress and prosperity. As we drift off to sleep tonight, let us imagine the bustling streets of Rome, the grandeur of its architecture, and the vibrancy of its people, and dream of a time when Rome was the heart of the world.